Welcome everyone. This video is going to be a bit different from some of our other content because, once again, and probably against their better judgment, Morgan and Teresa have left me unsupervised. And this time, it's New Year's. Now, I'm not personally one for resolutions. I usually just thrive off of chaotic energy. But my husband, Trent, he loves goals and like the whole self-improvement thing. His goals typically involve, fitness, health, but not this year. This year, he told me he wanted to write a short story and submit it to a publication. If you've never done this before, it's a very daunting task. And if you're doing it on your own, it can be difficult to even figure out where to start. If you have done this before, you know exactly what my husband, who, for reference, self-describes as not creative, is in for. But I'm a good partner, and I have agreed to help coach him through the process. Maybe writing short stories is related to your goal this year, in which case, come journey along with us. Maybe you want to learn more and watch someone develop a new skill. Or maybe you're just a seasoned writer, and this might provide you with a little catharsis. Whatever the reason, we're happy you're here. Now let's jump into this video.
I'm accompanied today by my husband. Who are you gesturing? There you go.
Know.
Do you want to introduce yourself quick?
Sure. My name is Trent. As Molly said, I'm her husband. I have
He
been
married me.
on, I
It's
did,
true.
several years ago in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 7-ish. Nailed it.
So Trent does not, you're not a writer.
No. The last creative writing endeavor I participated in was probably in high school. I think I took a creative, there might have been, no, that would have still been high school. High school is the answer. Is the last time I took a creative writing course that wasn't just like English 250 or something like that, which is more like essay writing.
Yeah.
Like
Are you gonna age yourself by saying how far away that was in years?
Let me think. It's so creative.
Good news. He knows how long ago we got married, but
Yeah.
not how long ago.
We're probably talking in the neighborhood of 18 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why now? Why do you want to learn how to do some writing?
Well, short stories specifically.
Yeah.
I want the writing goal is to really it's such a big part of your life and the lives of a lot of your associates, friends, colleagues, those kinds of things. People we hang out with in other contexts are also writers. So to get kind of a better understanding of writing, to better relate to you in a big part of it, but it's also something I used to enjoy and haven't really had free time or the ability to get back into. So this is kind of a good impetus for that, in short stories specifically, because that is a time frame that I can commit to.
Okay,
really.
yeah.
I can't sit down and be like,
I'm gonna write a novel.
Let's get a couple hundred pages knocked out. No,
Yeah.
I can't do that. So yeah, to better connect with you and understand kind of the appeal there. Maybe it will or won't be for me, but that's kind of what I'm getting at. And in terms of writing background that I have had, really is mainly technical writing. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of education writing in the veterinary field, things like that. So
if you're interested in bee venom immunotherapy,
yeah,
nailed it, didn't I?
That's my deal. You did.
Yeah.
You did nail that. Yeah, so I do a lot of technical writing and research. That's something I'm very comfortable with. I can read a lot about how to complete processes and things like that. I can write pretty articulately and clearly about factual information, just like concrete stuff. But again, creative writing, that's not something I've had to think about really. We're just going to leave this dog bark in. If we have to stop everyone, it's going to be terrible. So yeah, so basically that's the gist of it. It's a muscle I haven't exercised in a long time, but I do have a lot of writing background. It's just very technical, boring writing.
You've talked a lot about, your background writing while you're doing this. It's because you love me, obviously.
That was the gist of it.
Yeah, that was the gist of it. And you want to relate to our friends and stuff like that, which is lovely. I guess I'm curious as we go through this, what do you like when you consume a story? Like, what draws you to a story? What do you find compelling and interesting? Even not maybe in a short story, but in any kind of medium.
I think It's tough to say. Is something about being able to immerse yourself in an experience that, and I like a lot of like sci-fi, fantasy genres,
Hmm.
things like that. So a literal impossible experience. But when writing or media is of kind of a high enough quality,
Hmm.
obviously not something I'm probably going to attain on my first go around, but you're able to really get immersed in something impossible. And there's, interesting characters and those relationships I think that are interesting too. But I think when you have a good piece of fiction or a good piece of media, the ability to just disappear into it and it's
Okay.
like you're just
Okay.
gone from the world for however long it takes you to consume that. And I think that is what I value most.
Hmm.
There's a lot of aspects of it that are obviously enjoyable, but that ability to just like lock in, zone out, and just be lost somewhere is I think what is most interesting to me, and how
Okay.
the varying ways people can achieve that level of immersion. Even like different writing styles. Some people write in first person. Obviously, if you're watching a movie, that's there's a lot of different techniques there and how it's presented
Hmm.
and things like that. So that to me, that strategy is interesting too.
That's really fascinating. If you're watching this, maybe you're thinking, you've never written before, you've never written a short story before, and you want to try. You want to relate better to the people in your life, or you want to tell a story and you've never dipped your toes into it, and a novel seems like too much of a commitment, and you want a friendly place to start. Well, that's kind of what this series is going to do. We're going to take Trent, lovely, wonderful, beautiful Trent, and we're going to have this series where I coach him through the process of writing a short story. And the first place we're going to start after this after this episode is we're actually going to talk about like where you can submit your short story. What do you do with a short story? Because for some people, while they might have an idea in their head, other people want to already know where it's going to go, right? They know it's going to go to a journal or an anthology or something like that, and they can have some really strict requirements. So if you don't know what those requirements are before you start your story, you might end up with a story that you can't do anything with because it doesn't meet anybody's requirements. So we're going to look at that next episode. We're going to talk about, kind of brainstorming, plotting, what makes a good short story kind of contained. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to have some little kind of vlog sessions where Trent writes and I do editing, and we'll do some kind of feedback loops before ultimately the goal is what's the goal?
So the goal is to submit something somewhere.
Okay.
And that will probably become more articulate in the next episode where I learn about what are the somewheres or what are the some things and where are the somewheres. See, I have a lot of work to do, but that's what
Yeah.
editors are for. So look forward to that. But yeah, that's the goal is to get a submission somewhere. Whether or not it's accepted, that's not material is the act of submitting.
Yeah. The journey is the destination in this
Yes.
case.
Well,
Yeah.
the submission button is the destination,
Yeah.
not the journey.
Yeah, the journey. Well, the journey to there.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, so the first thing we're also going to talk about in this episode is, do you know what a short story is? Like, we're using the term short story, but like, what does that mean to you? Do you know what the definition
To
is?
me, it means a story which is short.
Okay.
I'd say, like, if I had to ballpark it, uh, 20 pages maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're not so far off. The first thing, like when you are in the writer, the author community, or the publishing space in general, we don't talk about things in terms of pages. We always talk about things in terms of word count, because a page can have a vastly different number of words on it based on your font or your size of font, your margins, um, and even your grammar, like, so how many sentences you have in a paragraph, how much spacing you have, like all that kind of stuff can fit into it. So instead we talk about word count. So for reference, usually when you say a page, roughly 250 to 300 words on a page. That's if you're using kind of standard methodology. And so a short story is typically considered about 1,000 words to 10,000 words.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're kind of in the ballpark. You can, somewhere beyond 4 pages, but maybe 15, 20 pages, like it's kind of nebulous. If you're below 1,000 words, it's called flash fiction, which I think is a lot of fun, but is kind of another skill set, right? Because you have to go even shorter. I wrote it down. So if you're over 10,000, but 10 to 30,000 is a novelette. Novella, 30 to 50,000 words. Above that is really kind of your novels.
I think that's the key with art is strict definitions, right? That's what
Yeah.
makes it an artistic
Artistic process.
Is really
You gotta
it's hard
be
lines.
Yeah.
10,001, no.
No, not allowed.
Novelette.
No. But I think one you'll see is when we're talking about how you submit stories and where you submit stories to, each one of those places will then have their own requirements, right? Certain place might be like, okay, we want your short story between 2,000 and 5,000 words. Another place might be between 5,000 and 10,000. Another, etc. So even though there's a broad definition, and they might have more strict definitions because they might be printing in paper, so they have certain space requirements, or they might be reading something out loud like the escape pod, and they want it to last a certain amount of time when they're speaking it. So there's all sorts of different reasons they might have that. Weirdly,
you've submitted to scientific journals, so you know this too. Some really arbitrary and strict format and requirements.
Yep.
So that's something I'm very used to working with.
You'll get there.
Yeah, I know that word count well.
Yeah, you'll be there. I think something that's really interesting when you're talking about like why do people write short stories and why you want to write a short story is one of the reasons people write short stories is because it's more approachable than a novel for a lot of people, and you can play around with a lot of themes and ideas, like what you're talking about, like escaping into a story, right? If you commit to writing a novel and it's 75,000 words, 80,000 words, 100,000 words, and you write your first draft and you're like, oh, this didn't work. I had this grand idea and it was great in my head, and then you reread it and you're like, this didn't come out. That's a lot of time that you spent, right? Whereas if you spent 2,000 words, writing a story and you're like, well, I didn't like this, I tried something, scrap it. It's less of that time commitment. You can keep going on. But also historically, I thought it was really interesting. Like a lot of famous authors, writing a book takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of time to get money from a book because you have to write it and then you have to sell it to someone and then they have to print it and then they have to sell it to other people, all sorts of things. But so writing a short story was seen as a quick way to get cash. Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, even Charles Dickens all like kind of funded more of their endeavors at certain points in time in the short story market, which I thought you might find interesting.
Yeah, even you look at like H.P. Lovecraft, that's all.
Yeah, he's all short stories.
Not that he ever made any meaningful amount of money because they were not well received often at the time, but
So you knew something.
Same way. I did. I had a fact.
All right. So I think, did you have other questions about short stories? Are you kind of ready for the...
I think that's a good, especially because we're going to dive into it a little more next time. I think that's a good starting point.
But between now and our next episode, you do have a little bit of homework.
Excellent.
So one of the first things I want you to do as your writing coach.
I have a coach.
As your writing coach, yeah.
Her fees are very reasonable. I think what's the Patreon level that gets them
the monthly coaching session?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the $25 a month you can join in our coaching session.
There you go.
I should make him pay you more.
Just take it out of my wallet and put it in yours. Yeah. We can do that.
Okay, sounds great.
Reasonable pricing.
Yes.
I'll let you know. I'll give a candid review at the end.
Great.
That'll get you more.
Chance,
maybe
so
not. Who knows?
One thing I want him to do, and if you're following along, or one of your loved ones is following along as well, or maybe you're just following along because you're really curious to see how Trent goes with this, and you think it might be funny, because that's probably what's gonna.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get some thick skin quickly. I think.
I'm a nice person.
You probably shouldn't be if this is going to be successful, but cross that bridge later.
Yeah. I think one of the best things you can do if you want to write a short story or write a novel or anything like that is to read short stories, to read novels, to know what you like so that when you come to the table, you know what the tropes are, you know what things are going on. So you previously told me that you kind of liked what oh, you can tell them genres.
So genres, I read mostly sci-fi, horror, or sci-fi horror, and
So like space horror, like Alien.
yes, very much. I don't have all of my Alien comic books back
They're
here.
over
That would
there.
have been a great backdrop, but or like urban fantasy type stuff, or like maybe a little bit of cyberpunk in there too, which is kind of sci-fi, or cyberpunk urban fantasy, such as Shadowrun. Great universe, terrible game. Don't play Shadowrun if you love yourself.
Now we know.
That was.
And if
that
you
was-
don't love yourself, we love you. So
Yeah.
don't play Shadowrun.
No, read a lot of Shadowrun, but don't play the RPG.
I love yeah.
That's a glowing endorsement. But yeah, that kind of genres.
Fun facts from us.
Yeah.
So I got one book for you, one collection of short stories, and then you've found one for yourself as well. So
Sure.
for science fiction, I want you to read this book, which is called "You Will Never." You're gonna hold it.
Bring it in.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully this doesn't go out of focus.
Which is "You Will Never Be the Same" by who is it by? Cordwainer Smith.
She told me this was her favorite, by the way.
This is my favorite short story collection. It only has it's pretty small, and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 short stories in here. I love this one, so this is what I'm gonna have him read for science fiction. You have
So I found this in a bookstore in Seattle, and it was on a corner end cap type thing that just said recommended. So I grabbed it, and I haven't touched it since. And that was
over a year ago.
almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
It was a little less because
Okay.
the flashback to the first day of the
Oh,
trip
yeah,
was,
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
today. That was so about a year ago. I picked this up. Let me see if it's in frame. And so this is the Valancourt Book of Horror Stories, Volume 1. I think there are 2 or 3 total volumes. Not sure on that. They at least had the second there. And it is... Ooh, Under Pressure. How many short stories are we?
Great question. Does it not have a table of contents?
No, surprisingly. Oh, there it is.
Oh, you found it.
I flipped past it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
He can read. Don't worry.
6, 7, 8, 9,
He'll make
10,
writing
11,
a little
12,
confusing,
13,
but
14,
he'll get there.
So I was like 17-ish.
Yeah.
I might not read all of them. I might. Depends on how good it is. If it's truly worthy of that recommended end cap in that bookstore.
Yeah. And then I think I'm going to find him an urban fantasy collection of short stories. If you have a favorite one that you think, yes, Trent needs to read this, it will inform his understanding of the genre, it'll make him inspired, they're just really good, please comment below and we can get him hooked up with that collection. On that note, thank you all for joining us. Stay tuned for the next installment where we confuse Trent more, and it will be a lot of fun.
I'm gonna have to take notes.
Yeah, you do need. Yeah, we'll get you a clipboard. Yeah, so be here if you want to learn about short stories, you want to write your own short story, or you're just really interested in following Trent on his journey.
All right, sounds good. Bye, everybody.
all. Now I gotta remember what I was gonna say at the beginning.
If only you had notes.
If only I had notes.
We can add this as a stinger at the end.
Just
Like, oh, we were totally prepared.
totally prepared.
Anywho.